gave me a word, and it's from a film that I've always loved, which I don't know if anybody's seen it, the film Field of Dreams, with Kevin Costner. And I think next time I preach, we'll go in more detail on that, because God gave me a word, and it was from that thing, and it said, build it, and they will come. And God gave me that word, and, I had a whole thought process going on what that meant and things like that. And then I just couldn't pull anything fully together for what I felt was right on that. And then I sort of ran out of time, and it was like, but then God said, but to build, you need to build a foundation. And so it went in a completely different direction. So I think the building will come next time. And I'm going to talk about Christ the foundation today. And so I'm going to take my glasses off so I can read this. It means I can't see any of you, but I can read this. So it's not very long, but God gave me that word, build it, and they will come. And I just really felt about, how we've got to start with a building. When you're building something, you start with the right foundations. And so today we're going to look at starting with the right foundations. And to start with, God sort of brought the passage. Everybody knows the passage of most people know the parable of the sower. And when he sowed the seeds and the ground that the seeds went into. And, God was saying to me on that passage, when we plan to plant, it's important that we get it right when we plan to plant. If there's no soil there, it's not going to grow. It'll just fall. There'll be nothing there to hold it up, no nutrients for it to grow. A plant needs the soil to hold it. But then, is the soil enough? Is it just having soil enough? What else does it need? You can't just push a root into some soil and expect it to grow. First of all, when you're planting something, you dig a hole, you put that in, you put fertilizer in, you water it. If the rooting is right, then it won't uproot and it will grow. So as a church, we need to make sure that our foundations are right. We need to make sure that we're rooted right so that we can grow. It reminded me, as I was thinking about that, we were in Malta a few weeks ago. And on one of the tours, they were talking about the vineyards in Malta. And they said, now Malta wasn't known for its wine. It wasn't known for having, very good vines, very good wine at all. Said, but when they became independent from Great Britain in the 80s, they said they had to look at, well, what does Malta stand for? And they said the tourism was one, but to bring tourism in, they had to look at the wine. So they actually looked at all the different types of soil that they had in the different areas, and they have to plant the right vines in the right type of soil. And depending on how they do that, depends on the flavours that you get out of your wine and the flavours they get from the grapes. And it was important that they looked at the soil to get it right. And they actually now have a thriving wine industry in Malta. And actually some of their wines have actually beaten some of the French wines in competitions now, because they've looked at it and they've looked at what they need to get the right wine out of the right soils. So as a church, we need to make sure that our foundations are right. And then as a church, we can grow. So to get growth, we need to make sure the foundations are right. In 1 Corinthians 3, verses 9 to 11, it says, for we are God's fellow workers. You are God's field, God's building. By the grace God has given me, I laid the foundation as an expert builder, and someone else is now building on it. But each one should be careful how he builds, for no one can lay a foundation other than the one that's already laid, which is Jesus Christ. So when we look at what is the foundation that we build on, Jesus is the foundation that we build on. When you look at Paul writing here, he wasn't looking at how he was going to build the church. He was looking at, Let's get the foundations right, and then everything else will come from that. What we know about the Bible, what we know, our theology, our knowledge of the Bible, our knowledge of the Word, isn't the foundation. The foundation is Jesus. You know, we say what we say here is the only mission is love. The foundation is the love of Jesus. You know, when we look at a building, when a house or a building is built, the higher the building needs to go, the deeper the foundations need to be. If you don't get the right foundations for the building, you'll never be able to build. Matthew 16, verses 13 to 23, it says, when Jesus came to the region of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, who do people say the Son of Man is? They replied, some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and still others Jeremiah or one of the prophets. But what about you, he asked, who do you say I am? And Simon Peter said, you are Christ, the Son of the living God. Jesus said, blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, for this was not revealed to you by man, but by my Father in heaven. And I tell you that you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell will not overcome it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven. Whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven. Whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. Then he warned his disciples, do not tell anyone that he was the Christ. And from that time on, Jesus began to explain to his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things at the hands of the elders, chief priests and teachers of the law, and that he must be killed and on the third day raised to life. Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. Never, Lord, he said, that'll never happen to you. Jesus turned to Peter and said, get behind me, Satan. You are a stumbling block to me. You do not have in mind the things of God, but the things of men. I always find that passage very interesting because it starts off by Jesus saying, you're the rock, and on that rock I'm going to build. And then a few passages later he's saying, get behind me, Satan. It wasn't Peter that he saw as the rock. When he changed his name to Peter, it meant rock. It wasn't that he was the rock. What he was talking about was that revelation of who Jesus was. And it was on that rock of the revelation of who Jesus was that the foundations were built and that the church was built. A revelation by the Holy Spirit of who Jesus is. So the most important thing for us to do is to know Jesus. And then we can see the growth. So when we go back to what Paul said, and when it talks about Paul, Paul described himself as a master builder. Yet all he was bothered about, or all he talked about, was laying the foundations for others to build on. He was good at his trade, so he knew. He knew a master builder is good at his trade. When they talk about the master builder was the person, it was like the foreman who would know everything that needed to happen in order for a building to be built. So Paul describes himself as that master builder. So what does a builder need to know? First of all, Hebrews 6 verses 1 to 3. It said, therefore let us leave the elementary teachings about Christ and go on to maturity, not laying again the foundation of repentance from acts that lead to death and faith in God, instruction about baptisms, the laying on of hands, the resurrection of the dead and eternal judgment, and God permitting, we will do so. They were the elementary, it talks about the elementary teachings. They was the start of the foundations. We need to know the materials that we're building with. A master builder needs to know what materials he's got. Different areas will use different building materials. Again, going back to Malta, a lot of their buildings are made out of the stones that are quarried out in Malta. So you see that they're all different stones. They even went on to say that some of the older stones were of a better quality than they are now because of where they're getting them from and the accessibility to the resources. And they're saying, and now cheaper materials are coming in from outside, but they're not as good for building with. So the quality, they're saying they don't expect buildings, one of the things they said on the tour, they don't expect the buildings today to last as long as some of the buildings that we see there now that are hundreds of years old, because they knew the right materials to build with. So for these things are the foundations, they'll set the key. Help us to get to know Jesus and set him as our foundations. So Paul knew that the foundations, as a master builder, he would have known all the materials that he was using, which helped him get a more detailed understanding of the person that was Jesus Christ. You are the Christ. Peter was the Christ, the Son of the living God. He was knowing Jesus. We need to know what Jesus did, what he's doing now, and what his purpose is. So the other thing the master builder knew is he knew the ground that he was working with. I've already said about the different soils in Malta. He knew the ground that he was working with. He knew what he needed to plant. He knew how to work the ground, how to work the rock, how to work the soil to build the right foundations. And for us as a people, as a church, we need to know what we're working with. We need to know the community around us. What works for one church somewhere doesn't necessarily work here. We need to look at the people that are around us, the people that we're reaching. What are the fields like? It talks in the Bible about the fields being ripe for harvest. But what are those fields? If they're ripe for harvest, we need to know how we bring that about and how we bring the harvest in. So we need to look at what the people need that are around us. I'm in a very privileged position of working for Keighley Town Council now. And you see a lot of the needs that are going on around us and around Keighley. And you see some of the hardships and the things that people are finding. And sometimes you look at it and think the only answer to this is Jesus. The only answer to this, we have that key, but we need to know how to unlock those people and how we can help. And I think we're doing a great job here. It's great. A lot of the things that we do with the Thursdays and having the open space and people coming into that is a fantastic opportunity to meet people where their need is. Some of the events that we have, bringing people in, the Christmas or the autumn giveaway that we had, the events we do at Christmas, all the events that we do meet people where they're at and where their needs are. And they will all, if we know the community around us, we know what we need to do. The third thing that the master builder needs to know is how high are we going to build this building? So sometimes we need to look at, well, what has Jesus got for us in the future? What does Jesus want us to achieve? What is Jesus' purpose? And what part do we have to play in achieving that purpose? Each church had its own fingerprint. You look even through the Old Testament. Said before, every church is different. What we do will be different to what the church down the road does. But each New Testament church had its own identity. It had its own fingerprint, and it's still the same today. Man is very diverse. A lot of people, when they're talking about evangelism, they're talking about heaven and they're talking about hell. They're talking about where we're going to end up when we die. To a lot of people, that means nothing to them. To a lot of younger people, it means nothing to them. Maybe it will appeal more to an older person that, well, what's going to happen in the end? But to a young person, that's not what's relevant to them. We need to look for what's around us. We need to cater for the vision that God's given us and reach these individual people. We all have the same ultimate purpose to achieve what God wants for us, to see people saved for Christ. But we've got to do it in a way that reaches the people that we're called to reach. It takes a lot of different visions to achieve the ultimate goal that Christ has for us. We look at it in different churches. Different churches will worship in different ways. You know, people have to find the place that is right for them, the place that they fit in. You know, what I love about the church here is, it's like this morning, we've got problems with the PA, but we're a family. You know, I've been at churches before where if that happened, you'd have half the church complaining about, well, we didn't have any words this morning, were we? But no, what I love about it here is that we're a family. It doesn't matter that we've got no words. It doesn't matter that the PA goes wrong. It doesn't matter that something happens. It wouldn't matter if all the electricity went out. You know, we're a family, we're a people, and we're a people together, and we have a unity. That's a real centerpiece, I think, for this church. Yet a lot of churches aren't like that. Different churches will have their worship in different ways. Some places will have hymns. It doesn't mean, just, and the organ, and, it doesn't mean they're wrong. It's that is their vision, that is where they're heading, and that is where that will attract a different group of people to the people that are attracted here. And we have our identity. And our identity is a key part of our vision. So as we look at what Christ taught us, and we look at the foundations, then we'll see things that give us our own identity and help us to move forward in unity. And that's the other thing I love here, is that there is such a unity in this place. And that people are so together in this place. And we all want to move forward together. But the key is that we need Christ's heart in it all. And we need to see Christ's heart to move forward. Sometimes we might think that things are moving slowly. When you look at a master builder, and I've often thought this on building sites, saying, well, nothing's happening on that building site. And you don't see what's happening. You don't see the growth. You don't see the buildings suddenly appearing. But they're spending that time digging into the foundations, making the foundations right in order for us to grow. We take one step at a time. And that's what I just love that we do here, is we take that one step. As God shows us to do something, we do it and we step forward, and we do it with a joyful, serving heart. But sometimes it may feel like it's moving slowly. That doesn't mean it's not right. That doesn't mean, so many people I've known will go somewhere and they think, well, nothing's happening here, so I'm going to go. And I'm going to go somewhere else. But no, as we build those foundations together, and the growth will come. That build it and they will come. The start is with the foundations, and then we'll see the growth. And as we take that one step at a time, as we don't run ahead of ourselves, it can be easy to do that, to run ahead, but we take our time, we build the right foundation, and we make sure that Jesus is at the center of everything, and then we will see the building start to grow. We'll still get it wrong. I'm not, all of us will get it wrong at times, but Jesus is with us every step of the way. So if we keep the focus on Jesus, keep the focus on the mission is love. The mission is for us to be together and that unity in love. And then Jesus will be there every step of the way, and we'll see those solid foundations. And then next time that I preach, don't know when that's going to be yet, we will look at that building and build it, and they will come. If anybody wants to watch that film, Field of Dreams, I would recommend it. You know, it's very much a story like the story of Noah, where he was told to build a boat, not knowing what was going to happen. He was just told there's going to be a flood, you need to build a boat. You know, he's there in the desert. Very much this is what that film's like. And then you see he started to build it in faith. And out of that, great things happened. And so we'll look at that next time.